The universe of Warhammer 40,000 is vast, cold, and merciless. Across countless stars and thousands of worlds, life is fragile, fleeting, and constantly under threat. Peace is a myth. Entire civilizations burn under unending war, and every faction from the Emperor of the Imperium to the dark powers of chaos. Two alien civilizations scattered across the galaxy struggles relentlessly. The void offers no comfort, no twinkling lights, no gentle constellations, only drifting debris, shattered fortresses, and colossal warships scarred by millennia of conflict. Survival is fleeting, and every moment carries the weight of inevitable destruction. At the heart of this galaxy stands the Imperium of Man, a vast machine of faith, fear, and iron will. Under the Emperor, humanity glimpsed a vision of unity. Entire star systems were brought under a single banner during the Great Crusade. Space Marines, augmented beyond human limits, struck across the stars, while billions of Imperial Guard enforced the Emperor's will. Yet even in that shining era, shadows festered. Power breeds suspicion, envy, and betrayal. Fissures widened with every unfulfilled ambition, and secret conspiracy fault lines that would shape the fate of humanity. Horus, the Emperor's chosen warmaster, became the agent of catastrophe. Once loyal and courageous, he turned against his master, plunging humanity into the Horus heresy, the most devastating civil war in history. Brother fought brother. Fleets vanished into the void. Entire worlds were annihilated. Space Marine legions split into loyalists and traitors. Imperial Guard regiments were obliterated. Chaos seeped into humanity's veins. True peace became impossible, a fleeting dream lost to fear, vengeance, and betrayal. Yet the Imperium is only part of the galaxy's grim reality. Xenos, the alien species of the universe, ensure unity is unattainable. The Eldar manipulate fate itself. Their motives inscrutable. Orcs thrive on violence. Their numbers endless. Tyranids consume everything. Relentless and insatiable, humanity can coexist with none. Conflict is inevitable. Survival dictated by predation, ambition, and instinct. Compromise is alien. Religion deepens the turmoil. The imperial cult enforces absolute devotion to the emperor, while chaos embodies desire, corruption, and the unrestrained pursuit of power. Worlds and populations are caught between devotion and defiance, succumbing to one extreme or the other. From hive cities to shadowed cathedrals, spiritual and ideological battles perpetuate division, ensuring harmony remains unattainable. War in every form, historical, religious, social, biological, and philosophical, is the galaxy's default state. Attempts at peace collapse under ambition, fanaticism, and grimdark destiny. Every faction has motives, every species has instincts, and none can claim ultimate victory. Heroes die, villains endure. Morality fractures into shards of necessity and survival. The galaxy spins eternally through cycles of conflict, a stage for unending tragedy, where no resolution lasts, no hope endures. Can peace ever exist here? Could worlds lay down their weapons, armies stand down, or is hope merely an illusion under the cold gaze of countless stars? No faction prevails completely. Every plan fails. Every attempt to reconcile is crushed beneath the inexorable wheels of eternal war. In this unforgiving expanse, every battle, betrayal, and ambition is inevitable, eternal, absolute. The universe of 40,000 is not shaped by heroes or villains alone. It is defined by conflict. History, religion, society, biology, and grimdark philosophy converge to make war eternal law. Every star system, every hive city, every human or alien soul is trapped in a cycle of destruction without end. In the galaxy of 40K, peace is not only unattainable, it is inconceivable. Yet it is precisely this hopelessness, this unending struggle, that shapes the drama, tragedy, and haunting majesty of a universe that thrives only in chaos. Before the Emperor's light could touch the furthest stars, the galaxy was a realm of despair. During the Age of Strife, humanity had fractured into countless isolated worlds, each consumed by war, famine, and decay. Warp storms severed communications and made interstellar travel perilous, leaving civilizations stranded and knowledge lost. Entire societies crumbled, leaving behind remnants of once great empires. Some planets fell into anarchic chaos, their populations enslaved by warlords, eradicated by pestilence, or left to languish in silent ruin. In this void, humanity's survival hung by a thread, scattered across the stars like fragile sparks in darkness. Into this chaos emerged the Emperor, a being of unmatched intellect, vision, and will. He alone perceived the possibility of unity, a single human empire spanning the galaxy. Yet the path to such cohesion was treacherous. The cosmos seemed indifferent to order, often hostile to human survival. The emperor offered not only guidance but the promise of purpose, demanding that humanity rise above petty rivalries and embrace a vision far greater than themselves. The road ahead would exact a terrible price. Failure would be measured in billions of lives lost. Under his command, the Great Crusade was launched. Fleets of starships carried soldiers, settlers, and administrators to distant systems, bringing them into the Imperium's fold. The Space Marines, genetically enhanced beyond the limits of ordinary men, spearheaded this unification, while the Imperial Guard marshaled billions to enforce the Emperor's will. Warlords were overthrown, alien threats repelled, and isolated populations incorporated into a new galactic order. For a time, the galaxy seemed poised for an era of discipline and hope, bound together by the Emperor's authority and vision. Yet beneath this triumph, seeds of division quietly germinated. Authority concentrated in the hands of a few, and reliance on unwavering faith in the Emperor created tensions difficult to reconcile. Even among the Primarchs' genetically engineered sons, pride, ambition, and differing philosophies simmered beneath the surface. What appeared as unity concealed rivalries and latent resentment, a powder keg awaiting a spark. The further the Imperium expanded, the deeper these fractures grew, though few dared oppose the Emperor openly. That spark came in the form of Horus, the War Master and favored son, whose loyalty had long been beyond question. Charismatic and brilliant, he commanded legions with unparalleled skill. Yet in secret, chaos whispered into his mind, fanning doubt, feeding ambition, and warping perception. Horus began to see his destiny as separate, even superior to the Emperor's vision. The Great Crusade's brightest star had begun to flicker, its light distorted by hidden manipulation. As Horus conspired, subtle fractures became visible. Plans executed with precision faltered under sabotage, hesitation, and disputes among legions. Minor conflicts hinted at a deeper, insidious discord. The seeds of rebellion, invisible to most, rippled across the Imperium like tremors beneath the surface. Whispers would soon erupt into civil war, shattering the fragile illusion of unity. Horus' betrayal was devastating in its precision. Loyalist legions were besieged by former brothers. Fleets clashed in the void of space, while planetary systems became theaters of horror. Skies alight with the fires of orbital bombardment. During the Siege of Terra, brothers tore through one another with the same skill once devoted to the Emperor's cause. Even those who remained steadfast faced impossible choices, confronting comrades now marked by treachery. The Istvan V drop site massacre became a grim symbol of the heresy's reach, where strategy collapsed into chaos and betrayal reigned supreme. Fear and suspicion spread rapidly, infecting the hearts of soldiers and commanders alike. The galaxy trembled not only under weapons but beneath the weight of shattered faith. The conflict became a crucible, exposing humanity's vulnerability and the ease with which ambition and manipulation could unravel centuries of order. Ultimately, the heresy did more than pit brother against brother. It planted the divisions that would define the Imperium for millennia, establishing a pattern of ceaseless struggle that no law, doctrine, or faith could ever fully contain. As Horus' rebellion spread, the Imperium fractured along lines previously unimaginable. Loyalist legions fought desperately to uphold the Emperor's vision, while traitor legions pursued ambitions fueled by chaos, envy, and personal pride. Entire worlds were forced to choose sides, their governors torn between loyalty, pragmatism, and fear for their population's survival. Within legions, loyalty became fragile. Commanders hesitated, soldiers questioned orders, and the chain of command strained under suspicion. What had once been a coordinated and unstoppable force now resembled a volatile powder keg, where even a minor spark could ignite devastation. The psychological toll was relentless. Comrades who had once shared triumph and camaraderie now eyed one another warily, haunted by the knowledge that trust could be repaid with betrayal. Cities and fortresses became defensive not only against external threats but also against internal treachery. Every decision carried life or death consequences, affecting not only soldiers but entire planetary populations. Hesitation invited annihilation. Miscalculation could doom worlds. Survival instincts often overshadowed honor, and the act of choosing a side became a desperate assertion of life against the omnipresent shadow of death. Chaos exploited every fissure, a patient predator feeding on fear and ambition. Its agents whispered into the hearts of leaders, bending pride, insecurity, and desire to its will. Worlds that appeared stable could harbor cults, corrupted psychers, or hidden traitors. Even the most disciplined legions found themselves ensnared in webs of deception, where battlefield victories no longer ensured safety. Trust became a fleeting currency. Alliances shifted like sand, leaving doubt in every order and hesitation in every maneuver. The galaxy's fate teetered between loyalty and treachery, order and collapse. The deeper causes of these fractures were embedded within the Imperium itself. Power concentrated unprecedented authority in the hands of a few, leaving ambitious governors, commanders, and even primarchs frustrated or resentful. Even paragons of martial prowess were vulnerable to rivalry, pride, and ideological disagreement. Faith, elevated nearly to divinity, collided with the subtle seductions of chaos. Religious fervor, intended to unify, became a source of tension, turning devotion into suspicion and inspiring dissent in those who hesitated. Ambition and personal desire acted as explanters, as influential figures made decisions motivated by self-interest, each choice rippling outward to magnify instability. Emotion became a battlefield in its own right. Fear of failure, the torment of betrayal, and the drive to survive intertwined with loyalty and honor, creating a volatile mix ready to ignite. These forces did more than disrupt order, they constructed a machinery of division that would shape humanity's future for millennia. Horus' rebellion revealed these vulnerabilities, but they had existed long before, quietly undermining unity until war made them impossible to ignore. Though the heresy unleashed unprecedented chaos, it was only the beginning. Initial divisions among legions and planetary powers would evolve, magnified by forces beyond politics or ambition. Religion, belief, and ideology were soon to become battlegrounds themselves, shaping loyalty, devotion, and dissent. The fractures sown by war were merely the first layer. The galaxy remained far from healed. The true struggles were only beginning, as dogma and conviction would fan the flames of discord across the Imperium, deepening divisions that no war alone could ever repair. In the aftermath of the heresy, the Imperium turned not only to armies but also to faith as a tool to enforce unity. The imperial cult, devoted entirely to the worship of the emperor, became the linchpin of social cohesion. Across countless worlds, the emperor was elevated beyond mere mortality, his image and commandments woven into every aspect of daily life. Citizens were taught from birth to revere him as the guiding light of humanity, the ultimate arbiter of morality and order. Temples, shrines, and clerical institutions sprawled across hive cities and star fortresses alike, serving as both spiritual and administrative centers. Faith was not merely encouraged, it was mandated, enforced through ritual, propaganda, and the vigilant eyes of ecclesiastical authorities. Compliance became survival, and deviation could invite suspicion, accusation, or death. Yet, where the Imperium sought to unify, chaos thrived on subversion. The dark gods whispered into the minds of mortals, offering power, freedom, and the fulfillment of desire in exchange for devotion. Unlike the structured, orderly reverence demanded by the imperial cult, chaos celebrated ambition, indulgence, and the transgression of limits. Its influence crept insidiously, taking root in the fears, doubts, and aspirations of humanity. Even the most loyal soldiers were not immune. Moments of doubt, private resentments, or the temptation of power could allow chaos to worm its way into hearts and minds. Where the Imperium demanded order, chaos promised liberation, and the conflict between the two became a philosophical as well as physical battlefield. This opposition was not merely ideological but structural. The imperial cult relied on hierarchy, codified doctrine, and uniformity of belief to maintain control, whereas chaos thrived in variance, exploiting ambiguity and dissent. Worlds that appeared steadfast could secretly harbor cults or heretical movements. Hidden among the devout clergy, planetary governors, and even space marine chapters found themselves policing not only external threats, but also the dangerous currents of belief within their own ranks. Faith, once a source of inspiration and unity, became a subtle weapon, dividing communities as surely as any army. Campaigns against chaos were fought not only with bolter and blade but with ritual and vigilance. Imperial forces purged worlds suspected of heresy, rooting out cults and desecrating shrines to the dark gods. The cost was staggering. Entire populations were questioned, imprisoned, or executed to ensure purity of belief. Loyalist legions and the Inquisition worked tirelessly to monitor, investigate, and eliminate threats. Yet for every cult destroyed, whispers of chaos emerged elsewhere. The struggle became cyclical, a constant battle for the soul of humanity that could never be fully won. The Emperor's light provided guidance, but it was insufficient to eradicate doubt, desire, or ambition entirely. Religion shaped not only the individual but the structure of the Imperium itself. Loyalty was measured through adherence to belief. Obedience and devotion were inseparable. Civil unrest, rebellion, or dissent were interpreted as spiritual failure, punishable with severity. In this environment, The boundaries between political, social, and religious authority blurred. The Imperium's survival depended on faith as much as on military might, creating a paradox. Belief united, yet simultaneously it exposed fractures where devotion was enforced, resentment simmered, where the hierarchy demanded obedience, ambition festered. Chaos exploited these contradictions endlessly. Every act of worship or loyalty to the emperor could be mirrored by secret acts of defiance, every assertion of authority countered by rebellion or subtle seduction. Faith became a battlefield upon which the Imperium's cohesion was constantly tested, a reflection of human desire, fear, and the insatiable hunger for power. The more rigid the belief system, the more opportunity for deviation and corruption, ensuring that the Imperium remained perpetually vigilant, constantly purging, and never truly united. Religion, in the galaxy of 4OK, was as much a weapon as a shield, perpetuating division even as it sought to enforce unity. Even among the most loyal worlds, tension simmered beneath the surface. Cults could emerge in the shadows of great cathedrals, priests could secretly question the divinity of their emperor, and entire populations might cling simultaneously to obedience and fear. The duality of faith, devotion, and doubt, order and chaos ensured that religion would be a source of conflict for as long as humanity endured. In this crucible, belief was no longer simply a comfort. It was a decisive factor in the survival or destruction of entire civilizations. The consolidation of the imperial cult after the Horus heresy did not simply create a unifying faith, it built an institution of extraordinary power. The ecclesiarchy, formerly known as the Adeptus Ministorum, became one of the most influential arms of the Imperium. Temples and shrines rose across every world, but behind their sanctified facades stood a bureaucracy that rivaled the administratum itself. Faith was codified, enforced, and monetized. Tithes were collected in both resources and loyalty, ensuring that piety was inseparable from obedience to imperial authority. In this system, religion ceased to be a private devotion and instead became a machinery of governance, regulating every aspect of life from birth to death. Yet such power inevitably bred corruption and extremism. The age of apostasy stands as a grim monument to the dangers of unchecked religious authority. During this dark era, Ecclesiarch Gorgvandia fused the power of the Ministorum with the High Lords of Terror, wielding both political and spiritual authority with absolute ruthlessness. His reign of terror, marked by purges, executions, and the wholesale annihilation of dissent, revealed how the very institution designed to safeguard belief could become a weapon of tyranny. Vandia's infamous rule only ended through blood and betrayal, but its legacy endured. The intertwining of faith and governance could never again be even in the aftermath, when the ecclesiarchy was curbed and the Adeptus Auritus, the militant daughters of the emperor, were elevated as enforcers of orthodoxy. The scars of the apostasy remained a warning to all. The Inquisition, though separate from the Ministorum, functioned as its shadow counterpart, where the ecclesiarchy preached unity through ritual and obedience. The Inquisition ensured compliance through surveillance and fear. To them, heresy was not merely deviation from doctrine but a cancer capable of destroying worlds. Their interventions were ruthless. Whole populations interrogated, planetary leaders executed, cities burned to ash if even a whisper of chaos taint was uncovered. Exterminatus, the sanctioned destruction of entire worlds, was justified in the name of purity. For the Inquisition, no sacrifice was too great, no measure too extreme, when the soul of humanity was at stake. The paradox was that the very fervor meant to guard against chaos often mirrored the fanaticism it opposed. Sermons called for absolute devotion. Rituals demanded constant displays of loyalty. Ordinary citizens lived under the unblinking gaze of priests, confessors, and witch hunters compelled to perform their piety as much as feel it. Fear of accusation was as strong a motivator as genuine belief. To falter in prayer, to hesitate in loyalty, or to voice a private doubt could bring suspicion, and suspicion could mean death. In such an environment, survival required conformity, and conformity bred hypocrisy. Entire populations might kneel in worship while secretly seething with resentment, a duality that offered fertile ground for the whispers of chaos. Even within the ranks of the faithful, divisions festered. Rival factions of the Ministorum disputed points of doctrine, each claiming exclusive truth. Some worlds elevated the emperor primarily as a fatherly protector, others as an avenging deity of fire and wrath. Such divergences were tolerated only so long as they did not threaten unity. Once they did, inquisitors and confessors descended with fire and steel. Schisms could erupt into full-scale rebellions, with heretical sects proclaiming their own vision of the emperor's will. In these conflicts, both sides fought with the same language of faith, both claiming divine sanction, proving that belief itself could fracture as easily as it could unify. The Cerritos, born from Vandia's manipulation but remade into instruments of purity, embodied this paradox perfectly. Clad in power armor, bearing relics, and chanting prayers as they advanced into battle, the Sisters of Battle turned faith into a weapon as lethal as any bolter. To them, the Emperor's divinity was absolute, unquestionable, and their very existence was a living sermon to his glory. Yet even their zeal revealed the fragility of the system they defended. Only through perpetual vigilance, indoctrination, and bloodshed could the edifice of faith remain standing. Religion in the Imperium was thus not a passive inheritance but an active battlefield, policed by priest and inquisitor alike. Where chaos promised liberation and indulgence, the cult demanded discipline and submission. Yet the cost of submission was constant fear of doubt, fear of failure, fear of betrayal. The Imperium survived through this fear, but in doing so, it ensured that every act of devotion carried with it the seeds of rebellion. Faith bound humanity together, but it also created fault lines that could erupt without warning, each fracture another opportunity for chaos to exploit. In the end, religion in the 41st millennium was not simply belief in the Emperor's divinity. It was law, governance, and survival. It was the means by which worlds were ruled, armies motivated, and heresy punished. But it was also a tinderbox of ambition, corruption, and dissent. The Imperium's reliance on faith gave it strength beyond measure, yet also locked it in an eternal cycle of purges, schisms, and suspicion. In a galaxy of unending war, belief itself had become both the Imperium's greatest weapon and its deepest vulnerability, a paradox that ensured the struggle between order and chaos would endure for as long as humanity survived. The Imperium's dominion spans countless star systems, each harboring civilizations with histories, traditions, and societal structures as varied as the stars themselves. On some worlds, primitive tribal customs endure, their people attuned to rituals and rhythms that have persisted for millennia. On others, hive cities stretch into the sky like iron forests, populated by millions whose lives are dictated by bureaucracy, hierarchy, and industry. Attempting to impose uniformity across such diversity is an exercise in futility, yet the Imperium persists, insisting on obedience, conformity, and loyalty to the Emperor. The very attempt to enforce cultural homogeneity sows seeds of discontent, as worlds accustomed to autonomy chafe against dictates from distant governors and star-spanning bureaucracy. Amid these societal tensions, the Imperium's power structures intersect in unpredictable ways. The Adeptus Mechanicus, devoted to the sacred pursuit of knowledge and technology, exerts control over production, innovation, and maintenance of vital systems. The Inquisition watches for heresy, mutiny, and corruption, wielding near-absolute authority to judge and eradicate threats. The Astra Militarum, tasked with defending the Imperium's farthest reaches, often finds itself enforcing imperial will on reluctant populations. These overlapping jurisdictions breed friction. On planets where loyalty is tentative, competing authorities may collide, each asserting its priorities, each demanding allegiance to its own interpretation of duty. In such an environment, conflict is inevitable, and even minor disagreements can escalate into widespread unrest. Cultural imposition further fuels resistance. Worlds with established traditions, languages, and beliefs frequently encounter the heavy hand of imperial assimilation. Indigenous practices may be outlawed, local leaders subordinated, and native institutions replaced with imperial equivalents. While these measures aim to unify humanity, they often generate resentment, rebellion, and subversive movements. Entire populations, compelled to adopt foreign customs or swear fealty to distant authorities, may secretly cling to their ancestral ways. Over time, this simmering discontent can crystallize into organized opposition, undermining imperial control and perpetuating cycles of conflict. The Genestealer cults exemplify this tension with brutal clarity. Hidden agents of alien influence infiltrate imperial worlds, exploiting grievances, religious devotion, and social divisions. Families and communities are subtly drawn into secretive conspiracies, their loyalties manipulated by promises of power, protection, or justice. By the time the Imperium discovers these insidious networks, the cults have often embedded themselves deeply into the social fabric, capable of erupting into violent uprisings that destabilize entire planets. In these instances, cultural friction transforms into literal warfare, as populations rise against their supposed protectors, driven by manipulation, fear, or the desire to reclaim autonomy. Even in the absence of alien subversion, social conflicts emerge naturally. Variations in wealth, caste, and opportunity foster tension between classes, while planetary governors' attempts to enforce imperial law can clash with local customs. The Imperium's obsession with order and compliance amplifies these issues. Deviation is interpreted as heresy, dissent as rebellion. Entire sectors are monitored, surveilled, and when necessary, subjected to harsh repression. Yet even such draconian measures cannot eliminate underlying grievances. Where diversity exists, so too does the potential for disruption, rebellion, and the crystallization of long-standing divides. Religion and culture intersect in ways that complicate governance. Local beliefs may contradict imperial dogma, producing friction that extends beyond political or military control. Festivals, rituals, and societal hierarchies, though harmless in isolation, can clash with enforced loyalty to the emperor, creating tensions that ripple through communities. These conflicts are rarely resolved peacefully. Attempts to reconcile imperial law with local tradition frequently fail, leaving both sides entrenched in suspicion and resistance. In this environment, compromise is scarce, and the exercise of authority is perpetually contested. The cumulative effect of these social and cultural tensions is a galaxy in which division is not an anomaly but a defining characteristic. Worlds rebel, factions vie for influence, and populations oscillate between compliance and defiance. Conflict becomes embedded in the social fabric, a persistent undercurrent that shapes political, military, and religious decisions. In such a universe, peace is fleeting. Even brief lulls in violence mask the deeper instability wrought by human diversity, ambition, and the Imperium's relentless drive to impose order. Part 3. Social and cultural conflicts beyond the infiltration of alien cults. The Imperium's diversity fosters a near-constant state of tension. Entire planets, once proud of their heritage and autonomy, resist the imposition of imperial rule. Governors and military commanders enforce obedience through patrols, sanctions, and public displays of authority. Yet these measures often intensify the underlying resentment. Worlds that outwardly comply may conceal simmering rebellion, secret assemblies, and underground movements ready to exploit any lapse in imperial vigilance. In some cases, centuries-old grievances, suppressed by force or diplomacy, erupt suddenly into violent uprisings, demonstrating that cultural and social friction cannot be extinguished through coercion alone. The phenomenon of planetary secession exemplifies the persistent strain. Worlds may attempt to withdraw from imperial control, seeking to preserve local traditions, governance, or economic independence. These acts of defiance, however, are rarely tolerated. Astra Militarum regiments, often supported by Mechanicus advisors and inquisitorial agents, intervene with overwhelming force. Cities burn, populations are relocated or purged, and leaders are executed or imprisoned. Even in victory, the Imperium leaves scars, wounds that fester across generations, breeding further distrust and resistance. The cost of enforcing unity is perpetual conflict, and the cycle repeats endlessly. Religious conflict compounds these social fractures. Local cults, heretical sects, and differing interpretations of imperial dogma ignite tension between neighbors, cities, and planetary authorities. Loyalist clergy may clash with rogue preachers, while factions within the same community vie for dominance. Rituals intended to honor the emperor can spark disputes, particularly when traditional practices intersect with the expectations of the imperial cult. Even the most zealous obedience cannot erase the natural inclination of societies to preserve their identity, creating a persistent fault line between imposed authority and cultural survival. Examples of systemic unrest abound. Hive worlds struggle under the weight of population density, class division, and rigid bureaucratic oversight, giving rise to frequent labor strikes, riots, and clandestine movements. Agricultural worlds, meanwhile, may resist resource extraction or conscription, triggering punitive campaigns. In every instance, the Imperium responds with overwhelming force. Yet the underlying causes, inequality, resentment, and cultural difference, remain unaddressed. Each suppression plants seeds for the next rebellion, reinforcing a galaxy defined by persistent tension rather than lasting peace. Even among loyal worlds, factions within planetary governments, guilds, and religious orders can come into conflict. Mechanicus representatives may prioritize production over local welfare. Inquisitors may target perceived heresy rather than focusing on practical threats, and military governors may enforce policies that alienate the population. These overlapping authorities create a web of competing interests, where allegiance is conditional and obedience tenuous. Minor disputes escalate, and local incidents can erupt into larger conflicts, illustrating that the Imperium's structure itself perpetuates instability. Ultimately, the Imperium's social and cultural conflicts are not incidental. They are woven into the very fabric of human civilization. Diversity, ambition, belief, and the relentless drive to impose order create a universe in which tension is constant and rebellion inevitable. Worlds rise and fall, factions contend endlessly, and populations are trapped in cycles of loyalty, subversion, and survival. Conflict is no longer a temporary state, it is the defining norm. In this crucible, the Imperium's attempts at cohesion paradoxically ensure that division endures, and that the galaxy remains a theater of endless struggle. As these social and cultural fractures persist, they intertwine with forces far deeper than politics or belief. The instincts and biology of every species, human ambition, Xenos drives, and the relentless impulses of survival magnify conflict across countless worlds. Division is no longer confined to society alone. It is woven into the very fabric of life itself, ensuring that peace will remain an impossibility across the galaxy of 40,000. In the galaxy of 40,000, the nature of life itself ensures that conflict is inevitable. Humanity, despite its ambition and ingenuity, is biologically and psychologically predisposed toward dominance and survival at any cost. Each individual carries within them the seeds of selfishness, fear, and ambition, traits that can be exploited by chaos or manipulated through hierarchy and propaganda. Even the most loyal subjects of the Emperor are not immune to envy, resentment, or desire for personal gain. These instincts, amplified across billions of lives, create a social landscape in which trust is fragile, alliances are temporary, and betrayal is never far from the surface. Beyond humanity, the galaxy is teeming with Xenos, whose very existence defies cooperation with human civilizations. Eldar, with their ancient intelligence and inscrutable motives, pursue goals that humans cannot fully comprehend, often manipulating events to serve their own enigmatic agendas. Their interventions are rarely overtly hostile, yet their priorities conflict inevitably with the Imperium, resulting in clashes that span decades or centuries. The Eldar see themselves as the stewards of a fading legacy, while humans are seen as chaotic, violent, and ultimately unworthy of autonomous survival. This fundamental divergence in objectives guarantees confrontation, whether through direct warfare or through subtle interference that undermines human control. Orcs, in stark contrast, are organisms built entirely for conflict. Every orc is biologically predisposed to fight, to conquer, and to expand their influence through sheer aggression. Their culture is one of perpetual war, where might dictates authority, and survival depends on violence. Encounters between orcs and human worlds inevitably result in large-scale campaigns of destruction. Even when no ideological clash exists, the very presence of orcs introduces chaos, as their instincts drive them to seize territory, pillage resources, and assert dominance. The Imperium's technological might may contain them temporarily, but the biological imperative of the orcs ensures that hostilities will resume, endlessly recurring. The Tyranids represent a far more alien form of existential threat, driven by collective predation and insatiable hunger. Unlike the orcs or Eldar, Tyranids act as a singular organism, consuming entire ecosystems to propagate their species. Their biology is tuned for efficiency, adaptability, and relentless expansion. Any encounter with a Tyranid hive fleet leaves human worlds on the brink of annihilation, for diplomacy is impossible, and strategy is merely a means of temporary delay. The Tyranids embody the ultimate reminder that life itself can be an agent of war, indifferent to morality, belief, or allegiance. Humanity's own biology and psychology further compound these external pressures. The same traits that allow humans to innovate, govern, and expand their civilizations also make them susceptible to corruption, manipulation, and internal conflict. Chaos exploits these flaws, offering temptation that resonates with innate desires. Ambition, fear, and the instinct for self-preservation can turn allies into enemies, and entire planetary populations into pawns for dark gods. The Imperium's reliance on rigid hierarchy and blind obedience attempts to channel these instincts toward collective survival. Yet the underlying tendencies remain, ready to erupt under the right conditions. History is filled with instances where these biological imperatives manifest in large-scale conflict, orc invasions of human sectors, such as the wars of the Badab and the incursions into Segmentum Obscurus, demonstrate the relentless nature of instinct-driven aggression. Tyranid hive fleets, from Kraken to Leviathan, illustrate how biology alone can dictate the course of interstellar war. reducing planets to barren worlds in the service of survival and propagation. Even interactions with Eldar, such as the manipulation surrounding Craftworld or the fall of Bealton, underscore how divergent biological and cultural imperatives generate conflict that cannot be reconciled. In this environment, peace is not merely fragile, it is an illusion. The combined forces of human ambition, Xenos instinct, and the pervasive influence of chaos create a galaxy where harmony is structurally impossible. Every species acts according to imperatives written into its very being, and these imperatives collide in ways that inevitably produce war. Civilization, faith, and culture may attempt to manage these conflicts, but they cannot eradicate the fundamental biological drivers. War is thus not an aberration but a natural consequence of life itself in the 41st millennium. Quiet is an illusion in a galaxy that never sleeps. Humanity's nature, its ambition, fear, and relentless drive for survival ensures that tension is never far from the surface. Leaders quarrel over resources, military commanders clash over strategy, and populations fracture along cultural, economic, and ideological lines. Even the most loyal citizens can fall prey to envy, desire, or personal ambition. Into these cracks slips the subtle hand of chaos, whispering temptations that turn devotion into betrayal. Every triumph, no matter how decisive, carries the seeds of the next confrontation. Xenos further magnify these pressures, acting according to imperatives beyond human comprehension. The Eldar manipulate events with subtlety and precision, nudging humanity toward outcomes that serve their inscrutable designs. Orcs born to fight, unleash violence wherever they roam. War is their culture, conquest their instinct, and battle their sustenance. Tyranids are yet more alien, consuming whole worlds without conscience or negotiation. Their advance indifferent to life, morality, or diplomacy. Each species acts according to its own drives, and when these paths intersect with humanity, conflict is unavoidable. Peace, in such a universe, is always fleeting, a fragile shadow across the stars. Even humanity's most formidable defenders cannot escape these truths. Space Marines, indoctrinated and genetically enhanced, appear to embody discipline and obedience. Yet their actions remain bound by instinct, loyalty, and emotion. Genetic modification and ritual can suppress these impulses, but cannot eliminate them entirely. Each campaign undertaken by a chapter reflects the delicate balance between imposed order and natural drives, demonstrating that even the mightiest warriors are not immune to the fundamental laws of life and survival. Historical campaigns illuminate this inexorability. Orkwog invasions sweep through sectors like living storms, tearing civilizations apart and leaving worlds in ruin. Tyranid high fleets, from Kraken to Leviathan, strip planets bare, leaving no chance for negotiation or compromise. Eldar interventions, whether subtle manipulations or open maneuvers, shape human decisions in ways that prevent lasting peace. Across millennia, the galaxy confirms a single unyielding truth: life itself, whether human, alien, or augmented, is inseparable from conflict. The Imperium's vast bureaucracy, endless armies, and rigid hierarchy exist to channel ambition, enforce obedience, and preserve survival. Yet these structures only manage the symptoms, never the cause. Conflict arises not solely from external threats, but from intrinsic human imperatives: the need to survive, the desire for influence, and the instinct to defend resources. Even under the watchful eye of the Emperor, every victory contains the potential for the next upheaval. Leaders, soldiers, and entire populations are bound by the same impulses that created their triumphs, and these forces inevitably resurface in future generations. The galaxy's biology, its drives, instincts, and imperatives dictates the rhythm of history. Each species moves according to irreducible principles. Humans innovate, compete, and seek dominance. Eldar preserve and manipulate their fading legacy. Orcs conquer and destroy. Tyranids consume and propagate. These fundamental motivations collide endlessly, producing cycles of war that no diplomacy, faith, or governance can break. Civilization and belief can guide, organize, and inspire, but they cannot alter the inherent tendencies written into the flesh and mind of each living being. In this context, war is not an anomaly, but the natural condition of existence. Struggle is embedded in every interaction, from the governance of hive worlds to the maneuvering of interstellar fleets. Every campaign, negotiation, or alliance carries the potential for friction, betrayal, or destruction. Peace is a temporary reprieve, a brief cessation in the constant motion of survival imperatives. The galaxy is a mirror reflecting the immutable truths of life, that ambition, instinct, and necessity govern all, and that no structure, however vast, rigid, or holy, can undo these forces. The Imperium stands as both a monument to human resilience and a testament to the inevitability of strife. Its institutions organize billions of lives and coordinate countless worlds. Yet beneath the surface, the same drives that fuel creation also sow conflict. Xenos, each following their own biological imperatives, intersect with humanity in patterns that guarantee war. Chaos, ever patient, exploits weakness, turning natural desire into catastrophe. Across the stars, the consequences are relentless. Whole civilizations rise and fall, worlds burn and are repopulated, yet the cycle continues unabated. Conflict is the one true law of this universe. Human ambition, alien instinct, and the corrupting hand of chaos collide in an endless war. History repeats itself not just through mistakes or poor rule, but because life itself, its hunger, fear, and will to survive, makes war inevitable. The Imperium stands as proof of humanity's endurance, but also as a monument to the endless cycle of bloodshed. In this galaxy, peace is nothing more than a fleeting illusion, and the nature of life ensures that struggle will never end, leading directly into the grim truth of the 4OK universe. In the galaxy of 40,000, morality is neither absolute nor universal. Every faction operates according to its own principles, its own survival imperatives, yet none can claim unambiguous righteousness. The Imperium, vast and imposing, presents itself as a bastion of humanity, yet its methods are ruthless, its bureaucracy suffocating, and its devotion to the Emperor carried to the edge of fanaticism. Space Marines, Imperial Guardsmen and Inquisitors enforce order with iron discipline, yet the price of this stability is beyond measure. Billions live under a regime where obedience is compulsory, heresy punishable by death, and the very act of doubt can lead to annihilation. Chaos, by contrast, promises freedom and power but always at a cost. Its followers pursue ambition, wrath, or envy unchecked. Demons and mortals alike twist reality, subvert minds, and spread corruption, igniting upheaval wherever they appear. To some, chaos is liberation. To others, it is the ultimate threat to survival and civilization. Neither vision can triumph completely. The galaxy is too vast, the powers too entrenched, and the balance too precarious for any faction to impose lasting dominion. War, therefore, is the natural state, and peace only a fleeting pause before violence resumes. Xenos races complicate this picture further. Eldar, Orcs, and Tyranids follow imperatives alien to human understanding, yet their paths constantly cross with human expansion. Eldar weave subtle manipulations, Orcs wage endless wars for their own sake, and Tyranids devour all life without hesitation. Their actions are consistent within their own logic but disastrous to others. The Imperium condemns them as enemies, yet they are neither wholly virtuous nor wholly malevolent. They simply act according to their nature. In such a universe, morality is situational, and judgment depends on perspective rather than universal principle. This grimdark reality permeates every facet of life. Every triumph carries hidden costs. Every peace is temporary. Victories prove hollow against the endless cycle of heresy, alien incursions, and corruption. Heroes rise only to fall. Cities are built only to be consumed. Fleets are gathered only to be broken. The galaxy is a crucible, and all who dwell in it are tested by forces beyond their control. Survival is not measured by honor or virtue, but by endurance, by the ability to withstand and adapt to relentless trials. The very notion of lasting harmony collapses under scrutiny. Treaties fail, alliances fracture, and dreams of order crumble before irreconcilable drives. Even within the Imperium, loyalty is fragile. Rivalries of politics, clashes of ideology, and the hunger for power ensure that unity is always conditional. Chaos exploits these weaknesses, seeding discord in the cracks. Across the stars, species collide because their fundamental instincts make coexistence impossible. No law, no doctrine, no decree can undo this. Heroism and villainy blur together in such a world. Deeds of courage are inseparable from brutality. Devotion often manifests through cruelty. Leaders are forced into impossible decisions, sacrificing millions to save billions, choosing between survival and morality. Every choice ensures further suffering. No faction is innocent. No victory brings permanent justice. The universe itself is indifferent. Survival and power dictate outcomes, and the consequences are often merciless and unpredictable. Even religion and ideology bend to this grim logic. The Emperor is worshipped as a god by uncounted billions, yet his vision manifests through systemic oppression and unending war. Chaos offers freedom that curdles into ruin, reshaping desire into weapons of destruction. Xenos follow instinct, culture, or survival, oblivious to human notions of good and evil. Each belief system is internally coherent, yet together they reinforce a universe where conflict is inevitable and harmony unattainable. The galaxy itself enforces this order. No arbiter exists, no sanctuary endures, no respite can outlast the tides of strife. In such a cosmos, moral certainty is a futile dream. Every action is tainted by ambiguity, every alliance conditional, every victory transient. Stability can never be guaranteed. The 41st millennium is not merely an age of war, it is the embodiment of unending struggle. Existence itself dictates that survival is the only law, and conflict the only constant. The galaxy of 40,000 testifies to this reality. Hope is fragile, life is harsh, and no faction, however righteous, can escape the rhythm of perpetual war. The galaxy's violence is magnified by its scale. Even when one campaign concludes, countless others flare across the stars, driven by incompatible ambitions and survival imperatives. The Imperium cannot impose order everywhere. Chaos cannot conquer without limit. Alien species follow instincts humanity cannot predict. From minor raids on forgotten worlds to high fleets consuming entire systems, every clash reinforces the same truth. War never ends, and no truce outlives the generation that forged it. Within the Imperium, the machinery of war functions almost as a living entity. Administrators, governors, admirals, and space marines act through rigid hierarchies, yet their combined might cannot overcome the contradictions of ideology, ambition, and survival. Factions within the Imperium interpret the Emperor's will differently, birthing divisions that chaos exploits. Rebellions rise on worlds once deemed loyal. Sectors fall to anarchy through corruption and power struggles. At best, the Imperium achieves temporary order, fragile and fleeting. Chaos thrives on such instability. Its influence seeps into minds, twisting ordinary impulses into instruments of ruin. Demons whisper in dreams, champions sway mortals, and cults spread like disease across entire planets, undermining the structures meant to protect humanity. Though chaos grants power and freedom, its victories are poisoned, its promises hollow, yet its very presence ensures the galaxy can never rest. As one rebellion is crushed, another rises, unpredictable and insidious. Xenos add still more complexity. The Eldar, with their far-reaching designs, manipulate human affairs to serve goals hidden from comprehension, sometimes provoking conflict to avert what they perceive as greater disaster. Orcs, creatures of violence incarnate, spread war wherever they gather, escalating chaos that diplomacy cannot tame. Tyranids, driven by biological hunger, strip systems bare, leaving only ruin behind. They are not evil in human terms, but their existence guarantees devastation. Each perpetuates the endless cycle of violence. Through all of this, moral clarity vanishes. The Imperium's leaders must make decisions impossible to weigh by conventional ethics, sacrificing entire populations to preserve strategic worlds, enforcing loyalty so brutally that dissent itself becomes treason, or deploying superhuman soldiers whose actions blur heroism and atrocity. Chaos tempts individuals with freedom, only to damn them through corruption. Xenos pursue their own imperatives, heedless of human ethics. Every choice deepens suffering. Every action sustains the rhythm of war. Thus the Grimdark worldview is not simply philosophical, it is structural. The galaxy itself enforces conflict. Species, cultures, and factions collide because their very nature forbids lasting coexistence. History repeats not because of failure, but because struggle is embedded in existence itself. Peace is always provisional. Every attempt to impose permanent order collapses under resistance. Ultimately, the galaxy proves that no faction, no matter how virtuous, ruthless, or cunning, can break the cycle of war. The Imperium chaos, and the Xenos pursue goals that make sense within themselves, but collide fatally with each other. Strategies, campaigns, and victories only delay the inevitable. The universe is indifferent, merciless, and absolute. Harmony is a mirage. Struggle is the only constant. The grimdark essence of the 41st millennium is undeniable. Life in this age is defined by conflict, and the quest for peace is an illusion. The lessons of history, religion, society, biology, and grimdark philosophy converge upon a single truth here. War is not circumstance. War is existence. Across the boundless expanse of the galaxy, war defines life itself. Conflict shapes every planet, population, and life form. The Imperium, vast and iron-willed, enforces order through devotion, discipline, and martial might, yet its structures ensure unity remains fragile. Chaos, insidious and unrelenting, exploits ambition, desire, and fear. twisting loyalty into betrayal and stability into disorder. Xenos, driven by instinct, survival, or inscrutable purpose, collide with humanity constantly, reminding all that no force, however powerful, can secure lasting dominion. In 4OK, peace is an illusion, and the galaxy endures as a crucible of perpetual struggle. Building on the grimdark nature of the galaxy, its structure leaves no room for lasting peace. History has sown the seeds of unending conflict. Humanity emerged from the age of strife fractured, vulnerable, and desperate for cohesion. The Great Crusade promised unity, but centralized power, ideological control, and blind faith created new opportunities for division. The Horus heresy shattered fragile cohesion, establishing a precedent of betrayal, rebellion, and internecine warfare. From this pivotal rupture, cycles of conflict multiplied, echoing across millennia and shaping loyalties, ambitions, and fears. Religion magnifies these fractures. Devotion to the emperor is absolute, yet faith that sustains the Imperium also enforces rigidity, intolerance, and fanaticism. Chaos seduces with promises of power and liberation, exploiting human weakness. Belief never remains neutral. It shapes societies, dictates strategy, and ignites struggle. Across worlds, cults rise and fall, rituals govern billions, and entire civilizations endure the crossfire of competing ideologies. Faith itself becomes a battlefield, with devotion, whether pure or corrupted, fueling perpetual conflict. Social and cultural divisions reinforce war's inevitability. Planets differ in language, custom, and governance. Factions such as the Mechanicus, Inquisition, and Astra Militarum pursue overlapping yet conflicting objectives. Local populations resist or adapt unpredictably, ensuring that even victories remain temporary. Cultural identity, ambition, and survival instincts collide constantly, and no bureaucracy, military, or ideology can reconcile these inherent differences. Fragmentation persists, and conflict flows as an undercurrent of existence. Biology amplifies these struggles. Humans, driven by ambition, fear, and survival, cannot escape the tensions they create. Xenos act according to imperatives beyond human comprehension. Eldar with calculated strategy, orcs with relentless aggression, Tyranids with consuming hunger, even space marines, genetically enhanced and indoctrinated, remain subject to these truths. The drives of life, self-preservation, ambition, conquest operate alongside fleets, armies, and empires, shaping the galaxy as much as military might. Grimdark reality asserts itself unmistakably. Morality is mutable. Victory is shadowed by consequence, and every pause between conflicts temporary. The universe rewards adaptability and punishes naivety. No faction, however righteous or cunning, escapes war's cycles. Every triumph plants seeds for the next clash. Every alliance is conditional, every truce fragile. Peace does not fail by chance, it is structurally impossible, a fleeting shadow against survival and ambition's unending tide. The galaxy of 40,000 stands as proof of conflict's inevitability. History, religion, society, biology, and grimdark philosophy converge to form a universe where war is not episodic but perpetual, existence itself entwined with struggle, and every life, human, xenos, or demonic, reflects imperatives binding all to unending conflict. Harmony proves illusory. Certainty exists only in the next battle, betrayal, or surge of survival instinct. No refuge exists from the galaxy's nature. Reflection reveals a cosmos defined not by peace but by struggle. Each faction, species, and civilization operates within grimdark constraints, compelled by necessity and ambition. The relentless rhythm of war is fundamental. It shapes life itself. To exist in 40,000 is to endure, to adapt, and to accept that conflict will never cease. Peace will never endure, and survival is the ultimate measure of existence. From every angle, history, faith, society, and biology, the galaxy teaches that struggle is the essence of existence. An understanding for OK means accepting conflict as life itself. Every act, every choice, every alliance reinforces the cycles of war. In the galaxy of 40,000, life itself is war, and war itself is life. In such a universe where conflict defines life itself, can peace ever be more than a fleeting illusion?